Hello, I'm Roger Baker, Executive Director of the Stratfor Center for Applied Geopolitics at RANE. This podcast is brought to you by RANE Worldview, the premier digital publication for objective geopolitical intelligence and analysis. Find out how RANE can help you stay ahead of global events at ranenetwork.com.
This is RANE's Essential Geopolitics podcast, the best conversation about geopolitics and security issues you will hear all week. I guarantee it. Today we're turning our attention to Indonesia. In a recent analytical review, our guest Scott Kardas wrote that the Indonesian government has decided to ban raw ore exports. Scott Kardas is RANE's Asia Pacific analyst, and he joins me now. Welcome, Scott.
Hi, Emily.
Let's hop right in. Why is Indonesia banning raw ore exports?
Indonesia as a country has traditionally exported raw ore or just refined nickel ore, for example, and they're not taking advantage of refining the ore, which gives them a higher value exports. Because if you're just exporting the ore, it's cheap. It doesn't require a lot of labor, but as a result, you're not gaining a lot of money and economic value out of it. And you don't actually get to develop your domestic infrastructure. You don't get to develop your domestic economy to take advantage of this. And so they're banning raw ore exports, specifically like nickel and bauxite, because they know that these can be refined into higher value products. And they want to do all of that inside the country so that they can take advantage of all of the greater wealth generated from exporting high-value products rather than just simple ores that are really cheap to buy.
So that sounds like a pretty good plan. You're capitalizing on the raw ore, you're refining it, so you're increasing your workforce, and then you're exporting it at a higher price. So you mentioned nickel in the beginning of this conversation. And why is nickel important? What would possibly come from the export ban when it comes to nickel?
Nickel is used primarily in two things. One, stainless steel, which makes up, I think, over 60% of the usage of nickel. But then if you refine nickel or have a higher quality of nickel, it's also very important in the cathodes for a lot of lithium-ion batteries. And, you know, as when we hear lithium-ion, you're like, oh, that's like the battery and everything, you know, smartphones to electric vehicles. And all these countries around the world are trying to push electric vehicle usage before 2035, before 2050, as a means to reduce emissions. And so you're seeing a big increase in demand for electric vehicles, which the vehicle itself is not terribly complex to build. We've been building car bodies for decades, but the batteries need the nickel. The batteries are the key component, and you need the nickel to make the batteries.
If Indonesia's got this plan, what does this plan mean for the rest of the world? I guess you mentioned the electric vehicle market, so what about that?
For the rest of the world, this means a few things. One, if you were relying on Indonesian lower quality nickel exports or even just barely refined or nickel ore exports, you're not going to get it anymore. And it's probably not going to be reversed anytime soon. So you're going to have to either seek alternative suppliers, but there's really not that many out there. Indonesia is the vast majority of the raw ore exports in the world. Other countries like Russia, for example, have a company, but with the recent war in Ukraine, it's kind of toxic for Western companies, especially, to be getting raw materials from Russia. And so we're going to see, and we already have seen some of this, where companies are just going right in to take advantage of some more advantages, such as tax incentives and the easing of red tape for you to come in and invest directly in the Indonesian nickel refining process. So they want to build up some new refineries. They want to build up the infrastructure associated with that. And you see companies, several Chinese companies have already gone in and said, we're going to open up some operations here. Here's several $1 billion of investments and promised investments over the next several years to achieve this goal. So we're definitely going to see a lot of that. The other thing is, and I didn't mention this yet, but I kind of alluded to it, there are two types of nickel ore. You have the higher quality and the lower quality. Right now, Indonesia traditionally exports the majority is lower quality. That's used for stainless steel. But they are banking on using a new technology, this high pressure acid leaching, which will then be able to take the lower quality nickel ore and refine it into a much higher quality nickel ore to be used specifically for the electric vehicle industry. If Indonesia is successful in this endeavor, not just the scientific viability of it, but the scaling, the economic viability of these projects, then other countries like the Philippines can look to engage in similar actions where they want to refine their lower quality nickel ore into higher quality nickel for higher quality goods. So for the rest of the world, we could see other countries following suit, or we could just see a major change in how everyone gets nickel. Now, this is also not going to suddenly drive nickel prices up through the roof. That's not going to happen, but it's going to make a lot of companies think very carefully on how and where they get their nickel. And a lot of companies might look to just jump right into Indonesia at the ground floor to get in while it might be cheaper and help develop these nascent industries.
Well, thank you for that, Scott.
You're welcome.
Okay, so back to the beginning of this conversation. I promised you would find it enlightening. Was I right? Let me know. Email me at info@ranenetwork.com. That's info@ranenetwork.com. Meantime, you can read Scott Kardas' analysis in RANE Worldview, and it has an excellent map showing where the greatest nickel reserves are on the globe. Our risk intelligence app is for professionals, and you can read it in our consumer publication, which offers objective geopolitical analysis and intelligence covering the global landscape. Find out more about RANE's industry-leading risk management tools, including RANE Worldview, at ranenetwork.com. I'm Emily Donahue, and have a great day.